it again. Fulham needed a goal scorer. It seems like they found one.
Hello and welcome to That's So Craven, your one-stop shop for all things Fulham. We are back and we're here to discuss a disappointing evening at Craven Cottage, going down 1-0 to Man United, who have done one of the worst doubles over us I've ever seen. A terrible Man United team, a terrible performance all round, a disappointing evening. Lots to talk about today. We have a full house. Feels like an episode of the Brady Bunch with us in the windows here, looking left and right and up and down. Not as many smiles as the Brady Bunch, though, today. So I'll start in my top left. Skibby, how are we going tonight? Or today, rather?
Yeah, I'm all good. I mean, there's lots of things to be disgruntled about. The performance, the kickoff time, the travel, the fact that I got home at gone 11 p.m. So, yeah, we're off to an absolute flyer for a Monday.
Yeah, let's see how this podcast goes. Skibby's just set the tone right from the off. Okay, it's down. It's dire. Mark, how are we going?
Yeah, similar to Skibby, a little disheartened, but wearing yellow, trying to be cheerful. So I'll see if I can bring a slightly more positive tone. But it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough with the match we saw yesterday, and then the topics we want to discuss afterwards. But let's give it a go.
Love it, Mark. I was going to comment on the yellow, thinking, trying to bring some sunny disposition to the day. Let's not kid ourselves. And finally, Pod Daddy, how are we going, Dad?
Yeah, I find myself in the very unusual role of trying to bring high energy. It's not really my shtick, but I'll see what I can do to counter the otherwise grey weather. Good to be here.
The doom and gloom.
Ah.
No, look, it's a tough one to talk through because I listened to the preview on our first episode of After Dark, and we were all really positive. I think everyone predicted a win. I think based on the performances Man United have put in so far this season, especially over the last few weeks, we all sort of saw this as a massive opportunity. But it just felt like, and it's the name that I've given the pod today, same old story. It's playing against a team who we should be beating, and just unable to break them down, and just for some reason not being on our game. And look, there's loads to discuss with this one. Before we jump into it, as always, let's have a quick click through our handful of slides. First of all, the Discord. If you're not already on the Discord, highly recommend jumping in there. Loads of conversation, especially in this last week of the transfer window. It's your one-stop shop, effectively. You're going to get all the information. We're very fortunate to have Fulham Fan News, aka Fulham Transfer, in the Discord, giving us literally live updates non-stop. You can ask questions. They get back to us with answers incredibly quickly, which is just, we're very, very fortunate and very lucky to have that. And also just, great chat on game day, especially post-game. There was a lot of talk going on in the Discord yesterday about, what went wrong. And we're here to talk it all through. Another one as well, just a reminder as well that we are on Blue Sky. So if you have moved across from Twitter, do check us out on Blue Sky. You can find us at cravenpod.com. If you're looking for the Discord as well, you'll find all of our links, including our YouTube and all of our other social channels on our Twitter and all of our social profiles. So take a look. Let's get into the game itself, guys. Kind of expected an unchanged 11. Marco doesn't like to change things up too much, but Mark, I'll throw to you here first. Do we feel like maybe for a game against the Man United side who have been so poor, we should have made a couple of changes tactically?
Yeah, I mean, Adama comes to mind, right? And I think we were kind of banding it around in the Discord and in the group chat as well about what we needed to do, and perhaps bullying that back line would have been really, really good. When we first went into that game, I was very, very confident that whichever team scored first would win, because I think it's two teams with, right now, quite fragile mentalities. And so we really need to hit them hard. And I think Adama and Muniz could have done that. However, we know how Marco is. Marco's stubborn. Marco doesn't like to change a winning side. And I mean, there are a couple of shouts for Andreas to start as well. I was with Skibby in the pub pre-match, right? And we were discussing, the merits and pros of Andreas and ESR and things like that. And I've heard Andreas bandied around a bit because, maybe he has something to prove against his former club. But ultimately, we went with the same old 11, and and I don't know if I'd call it a fair result. I don't really think United did much. I love XG. We look at XG, it was 0.6 something for us and 0.24 for United. So they had one shot on target, which was a deflection. We'll get into that. But yeah, same old, as the title says.
Dad, would you have liked to see some changes or expect? I guess expecting changes is very different from wanting to see changes. Were you in a similar boat, wanting to see Adama? And I mean, personally, for me, I would have loved to have seen Muniz start as well in this game. Like Mark said, that's a defence that can be bullied, and I feel like Muniz would have been perfect for this situation.
Yeah, look, I think I've had my expectations well and truly set. I think I know what I'm going to get. I'm just wondering whether Marco, when I'm talking about whether he's actually really settled on his best side, or he simply doesn't like to change it, or he thinks he doesn't have enough high quality options. To be fair, I didn't think. I thought Harry Wilson had a reasonable first half. I thought he was okay. Raul did what he normally can't knock the guy's work ethic. He tried very hard, but I guess that's not really what we're talking about here. We're thinking about how can you make an impact, and I think there's a lot to be said for Muniz, who's been kind of kept in a cage for most of the season. And I think there must surely be some energy, some sort of sprung energy there, which may have been useful to unleash. And so perhaps, who knows, perhaps that was a missed opportunity. On reflection, with the benefit of hindsight, both Muniz and Raul had their chances, which they kind of fluffed. And who knows if the same thing would have unfolded if you'd swapped them round and given Muniz a start. I just don't know. I think let's really be honest. I actually think we were better than United in the first half. We simply didn't take our chances. Should have been ahead. And I don't think we'd be scratching around for what's the best starting lineup if we'd actually taken our chances and got a goal or two.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Skibby, we've obviously been crying out for Sasa Lukic to come back into the side and, well, not Sasa Lukic as such, rather Sander Berger to come back in the side and partner Lukic. One thing, I think it was an observation, it's possibly someone in the Discord, maybe in our chat as well. The observation was made that the only issue that we have when Lukic and Berger seem to play together is they do both tend to sit a little deeper, and it does seem to isolate whoever's playing in the 10 in front of them. Do you think that is potentially a big issue going forward, seeing as Smith Rowe isn't really filling that role, and Pereira is maybe slightly out of favour at the moment and potentially off as well in the transfer window?
Yeah, and I think it was something that I picked up on in my kind of preview just before the game, which was, Lukic and Berger coming in. It gives you a lot of stability in front of the back four. We know that they both have the ability to be composed on the ball. They're physical, and they have that opportunity to sort of bring the ball forward, but not in a way that a traditional 8 would. But for me, it was the right choice because we anticipated a midfield of Manchester United of Ugarte and Bruno Fernandes, and I think with potentially Mazraoui coming inside, when they're in possession to sort of fill in the midfield. But for me, it was if those two contain Bruno, who, let's be honest, he is more attacking than defending, and they're able to pick the pocket of Ugarte, then that should leave a lot of space in between the midfield and the defence, and that would be asking either De Ligt or Maguire or Martinez to then fill that gap and step forward and try and squeeze the space, which in my eyes, Smith Rowe should have had an absolute field day. I'll have to look at the analysis that Cottage Tactico normally does, which is, where everyone was on the pitch and potentially what their average positions were. But in my head, with those two in the midfield, that should give free rein to whoever's ahead of them. And whether that be Pereira, whether that be Josh King in cup games, or whether that be, Smith Rowe, they should be able to dictate the pace of the game there and really find a lot of time on the ball. But unfortunately, it just didn't seem to work. I don't think I really saw. First half, you saw a bit of it, again out wide, but it comes back down to, I think, a stat that I dropped into the Discord a few weeks ago, which was that we're currently 20th in the league for chances created centrally. So everything that we do goes out wide. And I reckon if you even break that down even further, I reckon 70% of it is all down the left. So we are very one-dimensional. Definitely. And I think that's probably where we saw our fall down, which was we just trying to force everything down the left. And I don't know if that's a tactical reason that we just feel that, Robinson and Iwobi are just so effective working with Smith Rowe on that left-hand side that allows us to open up teams. Or if we are just severely lacking, and I know that this is something that me and Dave have talked about, which is, we are severely lacking in that midfield where Lukic and Berger are fantastic central midfielders, but they're not attacking enough for me. They're not they're not progressive. They're not those kind of midfielders that can unlock defences. And then when you're asking for your attacking midfielder potentially to do that centrally, Smith Rowe's out wide, helping out that triangle with Iwobi and Robinson. And I think that by not having that progressive centre mid, that's where we're sort of finding our downfall, and it was very, very clear to me to see that game. But don't get me wrong, I love Berger and Lukic. I think it's a great partnership, very physical, very composed, but it's just when they get a foot on the ball and they win it back, we just find we're out of ideas before they've even managed to move the ball on, unfortunately.
And look, it was, I thought actually it was probably one of Smith Rowe's better performances yesterday. The first half especially, I thought he actually put in a really good shift, was getting into good areas. I think Marco mentioned it in his post-game presser as well, just saying, it was what we wanted from him, but he just completely faded out in the second half, which I think is where a lot of the frustration often lies with Smith Rowe, is he just disappears. And that's a massive issue. And Mark, look, there's obviously a handful of issues across the board, but give me your initial thoughts on what was a pretty dire first half. I think I saw it was the fourth lowest XG in a first half of football in the Premier League ever.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, just give me your general thoughts on the first half. Sorry.
No problem.
Sorry. I just dropped you one.
Yeah. It was dull, and I think it was disjointed as well. And another point that was raised that was really fascinating to watch. It's cool because we all take different things away from the game, right? And we're all looking at different players and comparing pros and cons and things like that. But I think Anderson was a talking point, right? Because we haven't seen those long diagonals in ages. And that's a big part of why we bought him. We bought him for his leadership. We bought him for his experience. We bought him a little bit because he knows how to shithouse, right? And I think he handled, other people have said this, so I'm just echoing their sentiments. But I believe it was Dave. He said he handled Højlund very well, right? And pretty much made sure he never got on the ball. But a very, very low pass accuracy rating, which was painful. And Smith Rowe, I think, yes, having looked back at the highlights and watched him, he's also performed reasonably well. But I feel like he always holds back at the last minute, right? So he lays it off to Iwobi, and Iwobi continues driving forward. I'd like to see Smith Rowe also drive forward on the other and create problems for the defenders, right? Instead, he seems to hold like a controlling position. So I wonder if that's been coached by Marco, and that someone needs to always stay around the edge of the box and recycle the ball and pass it off to the wings, when maybe we can be a bit more direct. And I think I'd like to see that a bit more. But ultimately, pretty dire. I don't think United attacked much at all, did they, in the first half? So I think we were the better team in the first half. But overall, pretty dull watch for both sides.
Yeah, Dad. Any highlights for you in the first half? Like Mark said, it was a very dull first half of the game.
For once, the commentary that we were listening to, I think, got it right, and they actually articulated the fact that Smith Rowe was actually being left with a lot of space, like a ton of space, particularly in the first half. And we did find him a few times, and he actually looked, as we've all said and echoed here, he wasn't scintillating, but he was far from his worst game. That's a terrible statement, I know. That's a backhanded compliment, and not really giving him much, but it certainly wasn't his worst game, and there were little flashes of what can I say, high quality. We had a very long conversation. It's quite funny actually, because quite a few of us put in our soliloquies or PhDs today, summaries of the game, and a lot of that comes back to some frustrations. And I think the really big frustration is clearly our failure to find a winning structure, a winning formula in the middle. And I keep thinking about this, and I feel like we're missing a puppeteer, we're missing a conductor, an absolute maestro. These are not poor players, putting aside the defensive, quality of Berger and Lukic. I think everyone that's clearly our best pairing from a defensive point of view. I'm not sure I'd get any arguments with that, but it's for me. I know Lukic didn't have a bad game either, and he did try. I could really visibly see him trying to be a little bit more progressive, but it's just not in him. He just isn't that dangerous player running forward and carrying the ball into dangerous areas. For me, he's not anyway. And so we're missing a magician who can lift and elevate all these very, very good players and actually turn them into a great midfield. It feels like we're not that far off, and I don't know who that is. But I'm even more concerned that whoever he is, he's not close to being signed. On the topic of Anderson, I don't know. I'm not going to jump on Anderson's case. He's a proven player as far as I'm concerned in the Premier League. We saw it when he was on loan with us. We saw it at Crystal Palace. He's had a very poor few weeks. Absolutely no doubt about that. But I'm taking class over form any day. His form is pretty average at the moment, but he's still the kind of player, because of his experience, because of the way that he goes about his football, that when you need him, he'll dig in. Let's not forget that if not for a tremendous on-the-line save by Collier, we'd be discussing how Anderson won the game for us. And it was centimetres, if not millimetres, from being a legitimate goal. His passing is these long balls. The percentage success at the moment, I don't know. Someone I'm sure could tell us what the stat is, but it's pretty low. And where am I going with this? I don't know. I want a number 8 and leave Anderson alone.
Well, here we go. I want to combat that a little bit. I mean, Diop was in the form of his life, I would say, in a Fulham shirt, and defensively was very sound. The only reason he got dropped is because he didn't have the capability of the passing, the cross-field balls, which Anderson offers. But if Anderson's not offering that, then why is Diop missing out? In my eyes, I just think that from a corner, and I do get that Anderson got on the end of this corner. I can't remember him getting on the end of many. But for me, Diop is more of a threat from corners just because he's a bigger frame. He's a big lad, and if we can't get Anderson passing, then why wouldn't we revert back to Diop? I just feel like we're just not gaining anything by leaving Diop out. If anything, we're hurting ourselves even more because I think that Diop would be even more of a threat from set pieces.
And Anderson's passing
I think if
Anderson's passing is mainly long ball passing, and I think when you put Diop into the side, we don't attempt those long balls quite as often, and so we actually don't lose possession as often as Anderson. I did check the passing stats during the game, and at halftime, Anderson was at 62% when the average across the team was 92%. So he was way off the mark, and I think the 62% is mainly down to his long balls, because I genuinely think he was, none from about 15 in the first half. I don't think any of his long balls landed. In saying that, defensively, he was very sound. Højlund didn't get a sniff all game. Kind of forgot he was there most of the time. Diop would have probably done a similar job defensively, and I agree with you, Skibby. I think Diop's very hard done by to have been dropped, and he probably should be knocking on the door to get back in the side at the moment, based on the form of Anderson. Because I think we give the ball away so often. We talk about our struggles in breaking down a low block. If we're just putting the ball over the top constantly and not actually, we just give possession back straight away. And so we've got to then win possession back and then break down the block again. Like it just feels like a waste of time almost.
If you have a weapon like Anderson on the long diagonal, when it's working, you've got to try and deploy that. That's not a feature of Diop's game. Nothing against the guy, but that's one of the key reasons why we valued him highly, right, on input.
But it's like saying you should take a tank out to the battlefield. If the tank's not firing, it's actually useless.
To a degree, you can absolutely practice those on the training ground. But I don't think this is some new feature of Anderson's game that he's just developed. It's something he's been doing very, very well for a long time, and very consistently well. He's having a bit of a bad patch, and I think you simply have to find your mojo back in real games with real and doing it under pressure. And we can talk about this and go around the houses for as long as we like, but Marco Silva, if he believes that someone, e.g. Andreas, is a quality player and can do quality things for him, even if he's having poor form, he'll persist with him until the river rises again. And I think if Anderson was unfit or somehow making absolute howlers defensively, I think it would be a very fair argument for us to be having, and also for Marco to be realistically considering Diop. But I think if all that's happening is those long balls aren't working, I'm telling you, he's not going to pull in for that.
No, I don't think he is going to get pulled anytime soon. Mark, sort of sticking with the defensive issues we've got at the moment and kind of on potential transfers coming up as well. Castagna, again, I don't think it was his strongest performance. I don't think he played poorly, but he did get found out a couple of times by Garnacho, who, to be fair, is a decent player, tricky customer to come up against. Do you think that does remain our biggest focus, with Kenny Tete not having signed a new contract and obviously being out until kind of the last 5 or 6 games of the season? Do you see that as a big weak point at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, it's no surprise that we've been looking at in that area. I think Castagna is tired. I think he's a good player, but yeah, he's been he's the only guy we have there right now, bar youth players. And what's worrying is we don't know what kind of Kenny we're going to get back, right? Hopefully we get original Kenny, who's fantastic and ready to go from week 1, but that's a risk. And yeah, like you said, without the new contract, we don't know if he's back yet. If we are sensible, and I think we're trying to be sensible, then we should have that replacement ready. Some names have been bandied around in the Discord. Emerson Royale, before he got injured in that match, and we also have is it Van Eyck from Coventry?
Yeah, Van Eyck or
something
right.
like that.
And it's sort of going on a small tangent here, but we're being told, that the fee is going to be high, and if we really believe in this guy, I think we should push hard, because we're a Premier League team. We're an established Premier League team. We can tell him he's a future. He's going to get a huge wage increase. He's going to work with a talented manager. And no slight on Coventry, but it's not like they're pushing Prem, right? So I don't understand what a high fee is, because Gyökeres left for 25, and he was the star boy there. So maybe a high fee is 20, and maybe we offered 8 or 10. Just bandying numbers around, right? But if we were serious about it, we really believed in this guy, we would go for it. Because if he's really that good, then he's going to be our Robbo in 2 or 3 years, and then he's going to go to a top 6 or a top 4. So I think, one of the things, I love this club, but one of the things that frustrates me is we're so keen to get the best deal possible. Case in point, a few seasons back, Igor, a center back, we were linked. Brighton paid the fee, they got him. So, yeah, it's a concerning position, the right back. I hope we fill it. I believe we will. But we really put ourselves at risk to save 1 or 2 million. And as a fan, it's easy to get frustrated with that.
Yeah, for sure. Skibby, sort of back to the game itself. Like we talked about, pretty boring first half. Fulham had a handful of chances. The goal itself for Man United, a fortunate deflection off Lukic. Do you think Man United deserved anything from this game, realistically?
No. Next question. No, I mean, they just didn't create. Man United, they were sitting back, they were sitting in their holes, they were really comfortable. And I was annoyed about how comfortable they were. We just didn't try and stretch them in any fashion. I mean, when you look, they watch tapes, right? They prepare themselves for the game against their opposition. If you watch that Man United versus Southampton game, you saw that Yoro, De Ligt, and I think it was Maguire or was it Martinez? Either way, they had a real torrid time against fast wingers. And for me, when I talked about the formation which Man United played, where Mazraoui, the right wing back, was sort of slotting in the centre mid position, that should really give Jedi and Iwobi space to run into, and potentially Smith Rowe as well. And I think that's just what I haven't seen, or I didn't see yesterday, was from Jedi, where most games this year where he's got an assist or been one of an absolute best left backs in the world, I would say, is he was just getting to the byline, cutting it back. I didn't see that once. I just didn't see him really fancy himself against. I think on that right hand side was De Ligt, and I mean De Ligt is not a fast man. He's a centre back. He's built, but if you knock the ball past him, knock and run. If you take a kick, you take a kick. If it runs out of play, at least you tried it, and if he matches you, then you can sort of. You're testing out the waters. You're seeing what your opponent's like, and I just didn't see us stretch Man United, which unfortunately was our biggest downfall, even in those wing areas, which apparently are our kind of biggest strengths. But Man United, for me, every ball that came up to Højlund, Anderson had his number. Bassi would sweep up. I think there was some. They tried to do some really quick passing in behind. It was just really awful passing from Man United and awful creation.
Oh, yeah.
That you just saw Bassi just was like, oh, thanks, I'll take that. And I mean, there was a moment in the first half, I believe it was the 25th minute, and I made sure that I made a note of this, where I think Jedi gets the ball, he stops it dead for Anderson to run off with, and he runs away from it. And then Anderson just leaves the ball and Bassi picks it up. I mean, to have that level of time and to against Man United was laughable. But we just didn't do anything with it. And it goes for both teams. And then a mate of mine who's a Man United fan who absolutely hates Man United, he basically said there was an interesting stat was, I think since the start of the second half, at the 67th minute, neither team had touched the ball in each other's area or the penalty area. So it was just both teams just didn't know what to do. It's almost like pandas trying to mate, right? Like they're there and neither of them know what to do, and therefore they're going extinct. But that's a completely different story. But that was exactly what it was like watching. Just two pandas trying to fuck, and it just wasn't happening.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you make about Robinson as well. The bombing on down to the byline, which we've seen all season, which and works amazingly as well. The only time we did see it was the one time he got in behind and he put the ball slightly behind Jimenez. If he puts that out in front of him, it's almost a certain goal. You'd say Jimenez probably hits it first time and it's in. Unfortunately, it's a poor ball from Robinson, and we saw quite a few poor balls from Robinson. As you said in the chat, Skibby, it was the sort of crossing from Robinson we saw a couple of years ago. And look, disappointing, and finally in the game as well, just to sort of wrap up the game itself and just wrap up the disappointment. A couple of chances towards the end. Obviously, Anderson has the ball headed off the line. Muniz has a couple of efforts. The first one he hits into the ground and bobbles over. The second one he skies when he's fairly close. Kind of similar to Adama's, maybe not quite as bad as Adama's from the West Ham game. But Mark, just a disappointing day all round. But do you think Silva got the subs right this time round? We saw Kearney come on. We saw Pereira, Muniz, Adama. Adama's was kind of forced on because of Harry Wilson. But do you think maybe we could have made some changes a little earlier and maybe could have made some different changes as well?
I think the changes were right, but at the wrong time, which is a common theme with Marco. So, we discussed ESR, and I'd argue that I'm as big an advocate of ESR as Skibby is of Pereira, right? But he needed to go early in the second half. He just looked tired. He was kind of the pressing was a bit half-assed, and he needed to go. We get Pereira on, fresh, hungry, ready to go. Give him a good 30, 35 minutes to make a difference. I think he was subbed off really late, right? Wasn't it 75th minute or 80th minute or something like that?
Yeah,
I think it was 82nd.
Wow.
It
Yeah.
was
So
in the
that's
80s.
not really a huge amount of time to get someone up to speed. Muniz, I want to like him, and he's likable. He's young. There's potential. But that's like the second match in a row that he's missed some big chances, and it's frustrating. It's frustrating because it's not like the Fergie's United where they'd come and they'd play beautiful football. This is like a team that we all in the preview really were confident we could get a result out of, and a deflected shot from an angry hobbit that spent last match insulting Traore, only to get two-footed later on and then cry. And then of course it had to be him because that's how karma works, to score. That was painful. That was painful to watch. But yeah, kind of went on a bit of a ramble there. Sorry about that. But yeah, I think Muniz, maybe he needs one or two more chances, but we really need to start replacing our players, right? 45 million for Mitrovic, 40 million for Palhinha. Palhinha we've kind of replaced in pieces with Berger and Lukic. Stansfield didn't really replace him, hoping Godo can pick up there. But I would really like us to be brave in the transfer window. But knowing us, it's going to be deadline day delight.
Well, let's sort of segue away from the game now and talk about a couple of other things. Before we do, I'll quickly just take a look at the stats for this one in the table as well. Look, a very even game, 51% possession to Man U's 49. United with only one shot on target. We had 9 shots on goal, 3 on target. Slightly more passes for Fulham, 3 corners to Man United, 0 corners, and 7 fouls to 9 for Man United with the 9 fouls there. Quick look at the league tables. Fulham now sitting in 10th place on 33 points. We're a couple of points ahead of Brentford still. Even despite that loss, we're still 4 points clear of Man United. A few teams will start to climb up the table, though. I know Tottenham had a loss, but I expect United will continue to climb. Brentford and Palace as well, who are, having up and down seasons, but do get results here and there. We're still very much in touch with the maybe not the European spots quite as much now, but with sort of eighth place. We're only 4 points off Villa in eighth and just the 1 point behind Brighton in ninth. So there is a little bit of room for movement there, but I think we do need to start picking up results fairly soon. And we do have a couple of tough fixtures ahead as well. So we'll obviously get onto that during After Dark later in the week. So let's switch tact a little bit and talk about some off-field stuff. And Mark, you sort of touched on it there, and talking about some of the transfers that need to happen. And I think a lot of this reverts back to the way things are run behind the scenes. And Skibby, I'll throw to you first because I know you've obviously got a few thoughts in it. I'll chuck up a slide for those following along on our live stream. And it's kind of just a bit of an open discussion about the state of Fulham at the moment. There's a lot of talk pre-game about the prices of tickets, firstly, for the Man United game, with tickets on general sale for £160 in the Riverside. The fact that the game was not sold out and being advertised in the Metro as well. There's a lot going on in the background, and a lot of pictures that I saw popping up on Twitter of Man United fans in the Johnny Haynes, in the Riverside, just sort of everywhere. And before we started the podcast, Claire Green made a comment in the Discord, basically asking, the Putney End's a neutral end, but it feels like Craven Cottage is almost becoming a bit of a neutral ground now in general. And a lot of that comes down to the decisions made by the executive sitting in the back office, the main one obviously being Alistair McIntosh. Do you want to just, may as well just let you have a soapbox here and have a bit of a rant and sort of go for gold on what is, turning into a bit of a problem, not just at Fulham, but at other clubs around the Premier League as well.
Yeah, I think it's not new. It's not something that's just surfaced in the last couple of weeks or something. It's something which has always been. I mean, we've talked about ever since the Riverside started opening. I think that's where the problem started. As soon as the even when we broke ground on the Riverside, like the season ticket prices took a bit of a hike. Then as soon as it started to open, then we started to see these. We started to see these ticket prices come up, and Riverside was always sold as a dream to us. It's going to be self-sustainable, or help Fulham become self-sustainable with the bars on the front, and they're going to open up the Thames Walk for all access. So basically, even on non-match days, they can make revenue. Brilliant. Sounds like a fantastic idea. Don't get me wrong, but as soon as you start looking at the ticket pricing and basically the hospitality behind the scenes and all of this stuff, you're now starting to see that the stand was never for Fulham fans. The stand is basically a glorified hospitality for one whole side of the pitch. And, you're an idiot if you think that that's going to increase. Yes, it's increasing capacity, but you're not going to increase the atmosphere, which they claimed when they originally started this. So if you're getting day trippers in, paying £160 a ticket, spending, God knows what, probably about another £100 on food and drink, yeah, you're absolutely milking them. But they are not the fans that you want in the ground for a game like Man United. And don't get me wrong, Man United in the home end, it's always been a thing. Ever since I can remember, I've always seen sort of Man United, Chelsea. There's always one or two, but it just seems to be growing. And the Putney End being a neutral end, it hasn't been a neutral end for, I think, nearly 10 years now. I think about 2016, I think it stopped being a neutral end. But yet they still keep popping up. And I remember when I was sort of younger and going to Premier League games in, I guess, mid-2000s, late 2000s, that for Man United, Chelsea, Liverpool, for these big games, they would put in place that you'd have to be a previous booking history, or you couldn't have, postcodes. So if you were trying to buy a ticket and you were Liverpool or Man United or Manchester, it was a no-go. You don't see those in place anymore. And basically they want bums on seats, and it's just not sitting right with me. And I think where it's really falling down is they're struggling to sell it out. But yesterday I took a photo and the Riverside was sold out. And from a director point of view, from the Khan's point of view, what is the goal of your CEO to sell tickets, right? Sell out the stadium, sell out games. He has sold out that stadium, and great. On paper, it looks fantastic because he's charged all these bugs 160 quid or whatever it was, and they all bought it and they all turned up to the game. But yes, you sold out a stadium, but you've also sold out what Fulham means to us. You've sold out what a family club we are. You're selling out everything that is wrong with football. Well, I guess, but you're selling out which is making us everything that is wrong with football. And it's just so blind. It's just unbelievable. And then it comes down to the supporters' trust. They're trying to have conversations, and he is taking the piss. And I'm sorry for the supporters' trust, who I know that Dave's a member, and I know there are people who are advocates for the supporters' trust, but he is fully taking the piss out of you because he does not care about you. He doesn't even listen. He sits there, listens to what you say, gives you some absolute garbage back. He always says, "Oh yeah, we've reviewed the ticket pricing and we think it's fine." It's not fine, because from a financial perspective, it is fine. From a business perspective, it is fine because you're making that money. But from a fan perspective and for a football club perspective, it is farther from fine that it could possibly be, because you are just ruining the club from the inside, really. And this is the problem. The Hammersmith end last night, and it's not the first time this season that, yeah, you got the lads at the back starting all the songs. But when I've been in the Hammersmith end, it always comes down to sort of all the way down to the front. Everyone wants to get involved in the Hammersmith end because that's why you sit there. But it gets to around row Y where kind of the season tickets stop and it's silent. And there's just all these people who have no idea what's going on. But from a business perspective, double-edged sword, I get it. I mean, I bumped into an American family on the way to the Ipswich game, I believe. And they were asking me how I get to the ground. They all had their Fulham gear on, so I'm not saying that they're not true fans. But, you know, they were sitting in the Riverside stand, 4 of them. They were asking me questions about the stadium store. They all wanted to get Robinson shirts. And I get it, right? They've paid 100 quid each probably, so that's 400 quid in the back pocket. Then once you get the shirts involved, that's another 100 quid. So he's already spent about 800 quid for this day. And then, you know, drinks, the kids will want a burger. That's another probably 100 quid. So he's nearly spent £1,000 just on a day out with his family at Fulham, and he thinks it's fine. And I was like, once I started calculating all in my head, I was just like, this man is, from a business perspective, again, I'm going to say it, fantastic. But from a club and a football club, which for us is furthest from a business, is absolutely disgraceful. And, you know, I'm going to take a breath now because I think I've said a fair amount, but I do want to go on to the fan advisory board eventually. But go ahead, someone else stop me.
Well, I don't think you created this slide, Skibby, but I think the problem might be in the slide. We've got Alistair Mack.
Smug little face as well.
And we all know, I love it, Skibby, come over the top, one of those big lean over Anderson headers. You know, he's got that smug little face, as you say, but he's the henchman, man. He's, you know, what we should be having on that slide is Shahid and Tony. He's carrying out their dirty business. He's the guy. Do you actually believe that anything controversial doesn't go over Tony's desk to get signed off? He's a yes man. He does his job. He takes his decent salary. You know, come on.
I'll counter that slightly in the fact that his job as CEO is to turn a profit, I guess, as it's a business, and
sure,
he has to work out how to turn that profit. He's the one making the decision, and because the Khans, you know, they obviously know business, they know sport in a way because they've done it with the Jaguars and they do it with AEW as well. But he makes the final decision on this is the way we're going to raise revenue and make more profit, and he's gone on the way that we're going to be able to do that is sell super premium tickets in a massive new stand, and that way we're going to actually bring in even more money. So he's the one who's putting those ideas forward to the Khans. They just sign off on it because they're going, this looks great, you're going to make us shitloads of money. But he's the
Well-
one who's not thinking about the fans in this instance. And I think maybe it
Agreed.
is on the Khans to step up and say, the fans are unhappy. Let's look at how we can still make money, but keep the fans happy as well. But really, it does come down to Ali Mack making the decisions on how we're going to make money.
I've got no doubt that, I mean, one thing you have to believe is that Ali Mack comes and sits at his desk 5 days a week, or maybe even 7 days a week, and Tony Khan definitely doesn't.
Yep.
So I've got no doubt that he and his team, as in Ali Mack, are putting forward these diabolical ideas and business ideas. But if the Khans didn't understand it before, and maybe there's enough of a comparison between American football and football teams and clubs and fan bases and English football, I don't believe that that's stupid or that naive, that they don't understand or haven't listened to the criticism of what it's doing to grassroots, the grassroots fan base at the football club. So they're both complicit. He's the fall guy. He's coming up with the ideas, but they're signing off on it, understanding what the long-term effect might be, and in the short term going, don't care, sell at the stadium. I love the idea of the corporate stuff, river-facing corporate stuff in the riverside, and I hope I go and have a glass of wine or a beer there one day. But to actually deprive the ground of an atmosphere, to deprive the fans of being able to create a fortress, in terms of support and all of that, is so short-sighted, and he's never going to get any love for it, never, ever. And I don't think it really helps, build great value in the club, which after all, your real value is happy fan base that buy lots of merch and pay for your product. So you can say that you can just take the money off them through hospitality, but it doesn't work long term. An unhappy fan base is not a good club. It's not a good commercial prospect.
And if I may just come in there, so yes, I understand that the CEO has been given targets. You've got to raise our revenue streams by X. You've got to X, Y, Z, right? He's taken the easy option in my eyes. Or if price is up, revenue up, give me my bonus. Whereas I think in the long run, if you start to think about, okay, if we make it affordable, build an actual atmosphere that makes it difficult for teams to play at Craven Cottage and gets the fans behind our team, which increases our performances, which brings us up the table and actually gets us more prize money, that's an avenue. It's a risky one, but it's an avenue. And I think that is just something you've got to, and that's the identity side of football.
Yeah.
NFL,
100%.
you are I think it's $2 billion or something to buy a team, right? You all get the same sort of sponsorships, you get the same TV deals, everything is packaged for you. Once you're in the league, you're in the league, right? Then it starts to dry up, and then that's when you start to think, okay, well, if we raise the price of this and make it all the day trippers, and then that gives you a bit more revenue than other teams. But in the Premier League and in the EFL, it's not that simple. You've got relegations, you've got the prize money of finishing X, Y, Z, you've got all different kind of sponsorships, you've got so much free reign that you can do, that I just feel like they've just taken the easy option. And I think that's what just sickens me. And then it was what really riled me up, and I will get onto the fan advisory board eventually, but it was the picture yesterday with him with the FIFA president, whose name I had to write down.
Gianni Infantino.
Infantino. So you've got a man sitting there, laughing, smug, and he is the man that, robbed, and I'm still going to say it because I still believe it's the case, but he robbed the UK of a World Cup, moved it to Qatar. He moved it to somewhere that nobody wanted to go, and I'm sorry if I'm going to offend people from Qatar, but no one wanted a World Cup in November. Nobody wanted to go play in Qatar. But yet he got a nice little cash grab and they moved it to Qatar. And don't get me wrong, the quality of the World Cup, it was actually quite enjoyable to watch. But it's the fact of the manner in which it got moved, and it was all done for financial reasons, and he didn't give a shit about the fans. And it was just so fitting for him to be sitting next to our smug CEO, who does the exact same thing, doesn't care about the fans, and just cares about, lining his pockets with cash. That, they were sitting there thinking about, oh, I'm a bigger dick than you are to screw over fans. Oh, right, then you're going to have a pissing contest of who could piss off the fans better. I mean, they've got to be equal running at the moment for Fulham fans and basically World Cup international fans. But it was just a very fitting how they were together.
I couldn't agree with you more. I couldn't be angrier. I still blame the Khans. Ultimately, it stops at their feet. It's very short-sighted, and they're not stupid. Shahid Khan's not stupid. Tony's an idiot, but Shahid's not stupid. You don't amass those sort of billions by being naive. So that can only make them greedy, which actually boils my blood, because it means that they don't care. And the pack of them don't care. They just don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, Elton, I agree with
Mark,
you. Just to hop in really quickly, I think they don't care because, one, they're running multiple businesses and they're already billionaires, right? And so they have just given Ali Mack a target, whatever, 5%, 6% raise revenues. And then Ali Mack's been pretty lazy and just raised seat prices and made them like tourist tickets as well. And I would really hope that we would explore other avenues, right? So, I have quite a few Arsenal mates who look fondly at Fulham because of Iwobi and Leno and Smith Rowe and Nelson, things like that. And Skibby touched on the NFL earlier. And I think there's a team called the Green Bay Packers. Any Americans who are watching, you're probably way more familiar than me. And I don't think they're based in the biggest city, but they seem to be very well liked. This sort of like just a likable team, and maybe people buy their merch and they watch them because of that. I see no reason why Fulham can't be that team, right? Why we can't be the likable team. Someone else put in the Discord, we can have the coolest uniforms or something like that. Something to differentiate us, and then grow the fan base that way and monetize it that way, instead of just going after, people who want to be in the stadium and local grassroots support. For example, we're looking at Son at Tottenham, or Salah, right, in Liverpool. They probably, Egypt and South Korea, respectively, probably didn't know too much about Tottenham and Liverpool before those players. So if we, as a club, could also get on board a sort of a celebrity player, that grows our fan base exponentially. And that's another way to solve the same problem. But ultimately, when you have billionaires in charge, who Fulham is probably pretty low on their list of priorities, given the other businesses and interests they have, I think they're really just going to look at the top level figure and leave it at that.
I'll say it again, like I always do. I'm ready. I'm ready for them to go. I'm grateful for the hundreds of millions they've spent, but their heart's not in it, and I don't think that serves the club or the fan base. It doesn't leverage what we could be, and it's frustrating. And they're not ambitious enough, and they don't have their heart is not in the right places to actually support people's dreams.
I'm always a little wary of making a sweeping comment like that. I think it's not as simple as that. I think they could definitely pay more attention to Fulham, but as Mark and Skibby have said, they have multiple other businesses that they're putting a lot of attention into, and Fulham's not a cash cow like obviously Shahid's actual business, and AEW is making money hand over foot for the Khans at the moment. Fulham's not making money,
Sure.
so
On.
you need to at least be sustainable. But they're getting to a point where they're going to get a decent return on their investment at least, and potentially get to a point where Fulham do make money. I think the crux of it comes down to Fulham needs a new CEO. I think the current CEO is misaligned with the values of the club, and is there purely to turn this club into a cash cow for the Khans. And the Khans probably do like that in a way, and they obviously live the other side of the Atlantic Ocean and don't have that same attachment, although they have said a few times that they do have an attachment to Fulham. I don't think it's quite the same. I think you need someone like a Jimmy Hill style character to come in who really cares about the project and cares about the club and the fans and doing things right. And we link it back to the chats we've had previously about Fulham Women's and the investment that needs to go into there, and continuing to invest in the academy and holding on to those players as future assets. And I just feel like where Ali Mack is at the moment is in just a completely different space, where he's looking at tickets and seats as the only way to make money. And actually, we need to be thinking about Fulham as a football club, not a business, and put focus back onto the fans and back onto the supporters and the future of the club as well, because he's making money now, but the future of the club is the future fans of the club. And if you're pricing people out now, I've seen a lot of comments on Twitter, and I'm sure everyone's seen these as well, of people saying, I'd love to be able to take my kids to every Fulham game, but I'm priced out of the games. And then when you look at issues with loyalty points as well, not being able to get to games and take kids to games that are formative experiences in their life that gets them as Fulham supporters for the rest of their life, that sort of gets taken away. And that comes down to the decisions that Alistair McIntosh is making. So, yes, I know the Khans are the ones who can basically fire him and hire a new CEO, but they'd be happy with the output so far, which is the bottom line and the money that he is making for the club and getting us to a sustainability sort of point. I just think they need to hear what the fans are saying and hear how the fans feel about Ali Mack. It's kind of nothing personal in a way. He's doing business here. The Khans and Alistair McIntosh are doing business. We just want someone who does business in a different way. And I think that's a fair thing to ask for as fans of a football club. I don't know if anyone disagrees or...
No. And I think we should definitely look into the Bundesliga model, because you've got Bayern, I believe, no one can own more than 49%, I believe. So that it's fan owned. They pay, I think, 150 euros for a season ticket or something ridiculous. And yet they're still one of the biggest revenue monsters in the modern game. I mean, you don't need to be dicks to be self-sustainable. I mean, okay, Bayern is a bit of a monopoly given the size of their stature in world football, but it can be done. And I think there's got to be points where, and don't get me wrong, I think if you were to tell me that the Riverside stand, and I think I talked to you about this yesterday, Mark, was if you put the Riverside stand, if you said, okay, just the halfway line block is going to be premium platinum, which I think they've done anyway, and I think there's 97 seats there that they've sold at 10 grand a pop, 10 grand a season, and they sold it out. But that's nearly 1 million already generated, and I'm absolutely fine for that extra mil just to come in, help us out, but make every other seat in that stand available to fans, and then suddenly you've got a bit more atmosphere as well as your hospitality piece. But it just seems to me that it's just like you say, it's out of touch. It's just the way that I think Ali Mack has conducted business is almost like I think we got him from Man City. So I mean, they're not exactly the most lively lot, and they lost their soul when the oil money came in a little bit. So it just seemed quite fitting in the way that he was running the ship there. Came over here and he's done probably very similar. But I think there are definitely avenues which they can do. And I mean, can I move on to the fan advisory?
Yeah,
now?
please do.
What a load of rubbish! And I'm sorry if you're in the fan advisory board and you're watching this, because I don't blame you in the slightest. But I believe that the platform itself is an empty vessel where you've been sold an absolute lemon, where you're going to be the people who can talk between us, the club and the fans. The voice of reason, but basically you are just a platform for that we have to have in place. I believe the Premier League has insisted this across the board, across the league. And I read your minutes. I read the minutes in June. You kind of all met each other and decided on the plan. Okay. I read the minutes in September. They're still talking about a bloody plan. Has anyone thought about talking? I didn't see any minutes which were saying that you talked about the disgruntled fans and the ticket prices, which has been going on for at least a year. So even before the fan advisory board came about, I knew that the supporters trust has already taken it to the directors. So why haven't they picked that up? There seems to even be even more of a disconnect. So even though we've put in a platform which allows us to be able to talk to said directors and apparently eases everything out, it's now become even more cloudy because the supporters trust don't really have much of an avenue to the directors anymore. They now have to go through the fan advisory board. The fan advisory board then seems to go to the directors who just say, whatever. And then they'll just say, everything we do is absolutely fine. And I just think that that's absolute rubbish. And I'm sorry, I don't think I'm going to get on board with the fan advisory board for that reason. And I may be really call me a cynic, because I am that way inclined anyway when it comes to politics and everything, that I just don't trust anyone sort of higher above and who has the control. But it just feels like it's just falling on deaf ears. We're not getting anywhere. And if you are listening and you're a part of the advisory board or the supporters trust, the thing I do urge you to do is, Man United fans are disgruntled with their ownership, and they're struggling to get through. They're giving them flack for ticket prices and more at Old Trafford. West Ham fans are really having a go around sort of ticket prices. We're not alone in this fight. Like, if you combine our efforts, I believe, across the league, get the supporters trust to link up with the Man United supporters trust and the West Ham, and I'm sure there will be more who will jump on board. And if you start taking it to them from a bigger scale, they will start to listen. And if we have to then start thinking about, boycotting games, walkouts, and just anything that can get their attention and hit them where it hurts. And let's be honest, hitting them where it hurts is always going to be money. And it's going to be tough to tell tourists not to buy tickets and go to games. But I think there's got to be a plan where it's actually now turned into something that's bigger than just Fulham. And if we were able to link up across the league, we could actually make a bit of a difference.
Yeah. Mark, your thoughts on the fan advisory board? We're fortunate actually to have a few people in the comments on the YouTube saying that they have reached out to the fan advisory board and have heard back. But I do agree with Skibby in a sense that this feels like a box tick rather than something that Fulham have actually done to try and improve the way they communicate with fans and the way they communicate in general. How do you feel about the fan advisory board?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I can add too much to this conversation, to be honest. I did skim the notes, and there hasn't been a great deal of action. And like you guys have said, it's very much, we make a statement, or the fan advisory board makes a statement. Someone makes a statement, fans are not happy with ticket prices, or what are you doing in terms of enabling, easy access for people who might need it, right? And then we get, yes, we've reviewed this, and we're happy with the way the process is going. So I think there needs to be more visibility in terms of what's actually being done and what's being asked, right? And we need to see accountability and a trend of what's happening. What have we asked for? How many times have we asked for it? And what concrete actions have or have not been taken? And then from there, we can judge whether any meaningful impact has been made by the creation of this fan advisory board. So, as mentioned earlier, nothing's happened the last couple of months. It's not going to be easy, right? Because inertia is a thing, and we might be asking for some pretty radical changes in the eyes of the management. But we need to keep plugging away. We need to be united, and we need to really be observing any changes that we can and pushing for them. So, yeah, not to end on a downer. I think it's going to be tough, but I guess we need to have one voice and keep pushing forward.
Dad, anything to add on the fan advisory board or just the conversation in general?
Sure. This is entirely connected with the first part of this conversation. It's exactly the same theme. It's disrespect, cynical, and I think it reflects a sneering attitude of like, how dare they think they can have a say? How dare they think they can have a say? We're the ones who put huge amounts of money into this. And there's always a problem in my head when you start comparing football clubs to businesses. They are obviously a business, but they are clearly a very special kind of business. and everyone doffs their cap to it. And when one owner passes, he should not be mentioned, past ownership of the club to the next custodian. There's a great speech and, lots of, what's the right word, pleasantries about what it means to be the custodian, and it really belongs to the fans. They couldn't give a monkey's. But the truth of it is, the power actually vests and sits in the hands of the fans. But the problem is that fans don't act together. And we've had this conversation in our chat group so many times. It would actually be very easy to make them sit up and listen. And as Gibby said, you have to hit them in the hip pocket, and you have to make them believe that you're absolutely serious. Maybe it gets, and I don't know what it takes to get people to act together, because you could fill out a Riverside Stadium at £160 a ticket, happy days, and hit them up for the same amount again on food and beverage, and then maybe fleece them on their way out through the shop. But if three sides of the ground are empty because people don't turn up in utter frustration and rage at how they're being treated, you can't tell me that's going to get ignored. And if it did get ignored one week, and it happened a second week and another week and another week, eventually listen. Now, that's not how selfish human beings behave. It takes an awful lot before people actually truly lock arms and stand together, because there's always going to be someone in the Johnny Haynes or someone in the hammy end who's going to go, I'll pay whatever you want, and I love Fulham and I love football and I'm turning up, don't care. Right? But that's not how you actually force change. This is, again, we've got Ali Mack's head in the frame here, and I'm not supporting him, but it's a culture problem, and the culture of what is happening at Fulham starts at the top. I cannot accept any other argument. They're not, it's not as if they don't hear what people talk about. Indirectly, what we're talking about will eventually filter through. There's plenty of people at the club who work in the club who listen to what we say every week, and if we think for one moment that they're not aware of how unhappy people are, we're kidding ourselves. It's a very concerted effort to ignore, and I think that deserves a bloody nose.
Yeah, look, I think there's obviously some blame to attribute there, and it's a never-ending round and round, because we don't know the ins and outs of the relationship and how it all goes behind the scenes. It is hard to answer that question, but there's issues, and like Skibby said at the start of this, they're not new issues. It's been going on for a long time now, and it needs to be addressed. And unfortunately, it should be addressed by the fan advisory board. It's not, and you can't help but feel a little bit powerless in this situation, where you just feel like it's going to keep getting further and further out of reach, and it's just going to keep getting worse before it gets better. And it's not a nice position to be put in as a fan of your club, to feel like it's being sort of ripped away from you what it sort of stands for and what it means. So I think, the first step is doing what we're doing here and talking about it and getting it out there, and hopefully it continues to drive the conversation forward. And like you said, these conversations do get heard by the club. They might not feel like it, but the club would feel the swell from the social media and from all the other podcasts talking about it as well. So I think we just need to keep pushing hard to make things happen. Skibby?
One final thing, as I sense you're wrapping up. The only reason I got a season ticket was because I was getting priced out of buying a ticket to go as and when. I became a member, cost me 50 quid. I wanted to go to, I think the first game that I could have gone to that season, 3 seasons ago, was Bournemouth, and they wanted around £65 for a ticket. I said no. So I ended up buying a season ticket because, as Claire quite rightly puts in the chat, it roughly equates to around £35, £38 a ticket. But since then, there have been drastic price increases, and at the moment, I fear it's going to be a matter of when and not if that I can't renew my season ticket because it's just getting too much. And that is the reality of where it's coming to. There are people that have been going to Fulham for years and years and years, but at the moment, I think it was a 30% price increase. As it goes, it is going to be a matter of when, not if, that certain people can't renew their season ticket due to financial reasons and can't go to Fulham games, and the club are going to be really happy about that because that seat then goes out to a tourist, and that's what sickens me, and it really does piss me off.
Yeah, totally agree. And
just
go
to
on,
jump
Mark.
on what Skibby was saying, I do think there was a report a while back, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but they are looking to reduce the number of season ticket seats year on year, right? And I think that's quite worrying because you're getting rid of the loyal fans that way. But from a business perspective, it makes sense. So they won't kick you out because that would generate outrage and a lot of emotion and action, right? But they can just remove that seat if it doesn't get renewed, right? Like that seat never existed. And I think that's how they're long-term trying to grow revenue as well. And that's very disappointing to hear.
Yeah, well, you effectively get, and I think that's kind of the way to do it. You do it slowly, and it's a small group of people priced out every season, and so it sort of can be swept under the rug a little bit in a way. And it is disappointing, like you say, that those seats will, effectively be like they never existed in the first place, which is just it's a shocking way to treat fans and to treat the club as well. And I saw the Fulham Supporters Trust obviously put out an open letter in the last couple of days as well to the club, asking for the club to freeze ticket prices. And Skibby, you're saying it's not if, it's when, and I think that's already come for quite a lot of people based on the conversations we saw at the start of this season, the start of last season as well. People saying, I just can't afford this season ticket anymore. They've been priced out already, and it's just going to keep getting worse and worse. Guys, it's been a big one to talk about, a disappointing game, and obviously some disappointing stuff going on behind the scenes. But I think it's an important one that we've got through today. So thank you very much, guys, for joining in. Skibby, thank you for your time today, mate.
Yeah, thank you. I feel a bit better, if I'm honest. I got a lot off my chest. So it was a good therapy session. Same time next week.
Good. Mark, thank you very much for joining today, mate.
Thanks, Jack. Always a pleasure to be here. And onwards and upwards.
Yeah, let's try and catch up after a win next time, hey? And Dad, thanks for joining.
Yeah, always a pleasure. Good to chat with you guys. And seriously, never ever think that your voice here doesn't count, really, guys. Because, and I know it would be easy for people to say, look, you guys are 10,000 million miles away. You don't count. I think we care, and therefore we do count. You guys go every second week and sometimes more. And your voices and everyone following, along on the live stream and everyone in the Discord, all of your voices matter. They really, really do. And you should be, confident about expressing your viewpoints, because if you don't, you deserve it.
Brutal, but fairly true. Guys, thank you again. Thanks to everyone who's been in the live chat, in the live stream on our YouTube stream. We really appreciate all the support in there and just the conversations we've had. We've been reading through all the comments as we go and sharing those live on the stream as well. So really appreciate everyone who was able to join us live today. Thank you to everyone who continues to support That's So Craven. We really do appreciate all the support we get on social media, in the Discord, and continue to subscribe, like the podcast, share it with your friends as well. We really appreciate anything that you can do to help continue to help That's So Craven grow. So thanks again, everyone. And as always, come on, you Whites.